Okay then, strap in for a long one. This might be a double cup. There's a bit to talk about, you know. Bit more than I was expecting to date, because I've been ill with a chest infection, man flu, been absolute. I was going to record this the other day when the Shedden news was dropped and to talk about a few other things, but of course, Toca have announced the TBLs, which sets the rumour mill into mad times. Let's get a sip of this and let's get started straight away, eh? Okay then. So, Toca announces 2026 BTCC TBL holders. You've probably read it. List of 26 TBL, Toca BTCC licence holders for the 2026 BTCC season has been released today, 4th of December. For those of you who don't know, and I expect most of you will know, team can't run without a TBL. You need a TBL to enter the championship. So then, it's just a little release, and then the numbers of who's got how many licenses. We'll go through that. So, you know, we'll just jump straight in. What's changing? West Surrey Racing dropping down from 4 to 3 cars. Power Max Racing going from 2 to 3 cars like they did a few years ago. Unlimited Motorsport are continuing how they ended last year on 2. And Plato's come in with 2, which was expected. 1 Motorsport remaining in the championship after missing second half of last season with 2 TBLs, and a new assistant team principal in Raheel Hashmi, who's a good lad, who was the media rep at Unlimited Motorsport last season. That'll throw some of the discussions over, because everybody thought One Motorsport must be dead in the water. Obviously not the case at the moment. They are not condemned. They have a reprieve. If you know what I mean, people didn't believe they would come back last year, and they did. And the car's eligible for another year, so, you know, there you go. But 26 cars. Originally it was going to be 24. Well, 24 is the number that's been spoken about by Alan Gow, saying the ideal number for the championship. But if it's strong, and just because there's 26 TBLs doesn't mean to say that 26 cars will start the season. It might be 24. Somebody might say, no, off we go. But the 26 being handed out anyway. So, 26, not 24. WSR have dropped 1. Why is that? Some people might jump into it straight away and say, finances, running 4 cars. They're one of the more expensive teams to get a drive with. They've lost Jake Hill. Can they replace him? But, for those who don't know, West Surrey Racing are taking their first steps into GT racing this season. So, there's a possibility of, just because a bit of diversification in what the team's running with, could just be a case of, you know, planning for a future, because, you know, that BMW is going to be eligible at the end of 2031, the next set of regulations, because of it still being built internationally at the beginning of next year in China and places like that. So it'll go through that 5-year phase untouched. But is it a car of the future? Is it a car that needs to be replaced? Might it come to a point where they might say GT racing successful, we'll go there instead? Nobody knows. But they're down from 4 to 3. I've got 2 pages of notes, you know, not on the TBL. I had a load of other stuff I was going through, but I've just added the TBL stuff in now. PMR, obviously, new car, new Audi coming for 2026. They're going to run 3 cars again, like they did with the Astra a couple of years ago. Or they've got 3 TBLs, and you would think that you build a car, it costs X amount, but do 3 cars, costs 3 times the amount. Is it better to build 3 cars now and get some finances in up front to help? Because this is the thing when people talk about, even when it came to something like Toca Juniors, the car's too expensive. That may have been the case. But if you said if a car's X amount of money, you have a business plan that splits the money over a number of years to pay you back. It's not all up front, pay up front, and you're done then, because, you know, these cars run, it's not Formula 1, it's not a new car every year, is it? But yeah, that is that. Unlimited in 1, 2 each with the Cupra and the Honda, or are they? Because both have been linked to running Focuses over the last few months. In fact, more than a few months with one of them. But that would require Alliance to build themselves a new car. And when would that happen? Is this pen coming apart? Or does it just spin around? Spin around, of course it'll spin around. It's a Goodyear one. Just like the book. Goodyear. Yeah, they're being linked with the Focus. And, I mean, obviously Alliance, Napa, whatever you want to call them, are going to build a new car at some point in the future. When, as I've said in the previous episode, I spoke with Ash Sutton at Brands Hatch, and he was absolutely adamant that the Focus is carrying on over into 2026. But there's still time. If I was, if they changed their mind, the actual deadline date, I suppose, for them saying we're going to build a new car, had already been said by team owner Pete Osborne. I think he'd said Marcus Simmons in Autosport that the date at the end of the year is is a set date, realistically, a little bit time after the last race of the season. So there could have been a change. They could be building a new car for all we know. They're not going to tell the likes of me, are they? Because I'll blabber to you. Anyway, so it looks healthy on paper. 26 cars, doesn't it? If all of them can get through the season, 26 cars with the new rules, I think it should be a belter. Now, the rumour mill's going to go absolutely nuts now, isn't it? Because the makeup of the series is, well, I'll go through it again. Alliance 4 cars, Accelerate 4 cars, which will be the same. One, what car they're going to run. Plato, what car they're going to run, 2 of them. 3 Power Maxed Audis, Restart, obviously, and with the high Hyundais. Speedworks have got 4, which is 2 MB Toyotas, 2 Speedworks Toyotas, and Unlimited have got 2. WSR have got 3. Who steers, who goes? We'll be getting into that in a few minutes. Right then, a little sip for this flu boy here. Instead of whittering on, I just want to say this is typical of me. Saturday, I went to throw a lot of foul language abuse at people from Bournemouth. Not people in Bournemouth in general, it was at the Sunderland match, and for the first time in about 10 years I actually had seats right beside the away fans, because the way the stadium's set out, you don't often get up near the away fans if you're somebody who goes regular. And I typically sit down, and the guy in front of us sits down, and he's wearing an Accelerate Motorsport jacket, and I think, oh, well, must be a fan. So I tap him on the shoulder and say, are you a fan? He said, no, I work for them. I say, bloody typical, isn't it? Go to a football match, sit down behind somebody who works for Accelerate. On the mini side, it turns out, and no, there was no gossip for me. So, that's a shame. Wouldn't spill any beans on what they knew, what was going on at Accelerate, if they knew. But there you go. But I was out on Friday last week as well, doing some pre-research for an upcoming issue of Touring Car magazine, where we are going to do an RML special with Plato coming in with the RML car. Had a good chat with my mate Bradders. You might know him as Joe Bradley, who is a commentator you'll have heard on Radio Le Mans at Daytona and Le Mans 24 Hours and whatnot, but he's next BTCC team manager. He's the fella who brought in the Chevy Lassetti WTCC cars in 2008, the RML Chevys. I know Joe quite well, and we're going to have a good... it's going to be a good one to read, the stuff that I can print. Obviously, along with that, now I'm promoting in upcoming issues. We'll be doing a feature on the RML Nissans from the Super Touring era. I know a couple of people, including local, who work there. I was actually at Nissan, as I've said in a previous episode. I was at Nissan on the production line for a bit when the RML cars were being built. It was a shite job. I walked out. I went and took a different job instead. Didn't care how much money they were paying. It was just monotonously boring crap. But I've still got a soft spot for the Primera GT in pearlescent paint. In fact, I think that might have turned up in Gran Turismo for those game fans here. Anyway, never mind about the factory shite at Nissan. I'm going to talk about Shedden in a moment and the lack of youngsters that have been coming over the last few years. But I need to ask you guys a question. Let's get a sip of this. What do you want to see? Because I've started this the wrong time of the year. After the season ended, I should have been doing it during the season because I'm in a fairly privileged position in terms of pit lane and paddock access and trackside for BTCC, TCR, being there for years. What do you want to know? What do you want to know about that's not necessarily, you know, what you don't get to see, what you don't get to know? I mean, I've got a video coming up where I'm going to speak about driver routines. So I'm not allowed, with BTCC, I'm not allowed to record trackside or pit lane footage, but I've recorded in the garage. Not being a journalist and photographer, it's fantastically interesting to watch all the different drivers' pre-race routines and how they react. And I was thinking about doing about video of that and those kind of things. If there's any of that kind of stuff, drop it in the comments below. I've got plans for some other things that maybe, you know, a little bit off the beaten track, just to fill in the winter months and keep you interested and entertained and informed. So yeah, anything, just drop it down below and we can have a look and see if we can do a video of it. We've got some interviews coming up and stuff like that later on, but obviously this is a byproduct of the magazine. Back to the news though. Shedden had said in the last episode that he hadn't announced a retirement. Obviously now you know that kind of knew that he was coming to MB Motorsport, and same with Toyota, knew that was happening. But it hadn't been announced because you would expect a driver of that calibre and that kind of heritage within the sport, if he was going to pack it in, he'd announce it. But he hadn't announced it, obviously, because he was staying with Toyota, but with MB now, which is, I think, a sensible continuation. If you look at last year, yeah, he won at Oulton Park, but it was against the grain. The car wasn't particularly competitive. It was one of those, I mean, yeah, experience carried him through, but it was one of those really, you know, unexpected wins. But when you look at the back end of last season, when they changed the engine from the Neil Brown engine to the Toca engine, the last 3 rounds was podiums. And it dragged them into the top 10 in points, which wouldn't have happened if they stayed with the original engine. Right, sorry, I had to cut that a little bit. I had a bit of a coughing fit. Being all... not sleeping very well. And because of the chest infection, they're giving us all these steroids, and it's like I'm on speed all night. My head's just going 100 miles an hour, and you can't sit and concentrate on anything. Well, I'm getting a lot more hours in on race room, I'll tell you that, overnight when I should be asleep. So I'm only getting about 3 hours sleep at the minute. Jesus Christ. For a man of my age, no. Anyhow. Yeah, so yeah, Aaron Tailsmith's obviously, like Shedden, saying that there's something there with the MB deal, and they've stuck with it. Young drivers, is there enough young drivers coming in to move the old guard on? There isn't that kind of turnover, and it's interesting because I've spoke to a BTCC team manager of late on this. I've gotten me notes here. What they said, budget is now harder for younger drivers without a background to raise the ROI for them to their backers is hard to prove, especially in a semi-depressed financial time. But said veteran drivers coming in and paying a little bit more to subsidise young drivers is almost a thing of the past, because that has happened in the past where, you know, one driver comes in with 600,000, one comes in with 350 or whatever. They're just arbitrary numbers. It doesn't happen as much as it had in the past because people want to know where every penny's going, because they're having to max out to get the deal. Now, there has been some moves in the last couple of years, last couple of seasons, where drivers have left the series and people have thought they've run out of money, and that hasn't been the case. There's been disagreements. In fact, I was told by a fairly solid source that 18 months ago, a driver was put in legal action against a team because they'd agreed a deal to race for a year to pay X amount of money, but some of that money was going towards running another driver, which wasn't part of the agreement. I'm not going to name names, and even if you ask us in person, I'm not going to name names, because if there is legal implications of it, I don't want to be, anyway. So yeah, the challenge of getting young drivers in has been a bit of a challenge for the last few years. But has it? Because you go back all the way to Super Touring, and you go through the BTC and even the S2000 times, you didn't have that many young drivers coming in and usurping the veterans, did you? BTCC, in fact, apart from Andrew Jordan's title and Ash Sutton's first title, I think, it's been all old guard, or drivers who've served time, who've won titles really. Before, how long did it take Colin Turkington and Gordon Shedden to win the first race, titles? Matt Neal, people like that from the Super Touring, and even back then in the Super Touring, someone like James Thompson winning the race at 22, 23, that was an absolute anomaly. So it's never really been a championship that's favoured young drivers. Do we need that to change? I don't know. Well, we need the financial situation to change. That's not to do with touring cars, that's just life in general, and we're all shafted. Doesn't matter whether you're Reform, Labour, Conservative, Liberal, Green, whatever, they'll all lie to you, and they'll all shaft you, and they'll all take money off you, and they'll all kind of trust any of them, man. Anyway, I'm not going to get into politics. How many people are coming back, and who's coming back next year? That's interesting. And it comes all the way back around to the TBL thing of, is there more seats available now? And the thing is, the more seats that there are, the less that some of the the prices should in that market come down a little bit if there's not enough, especially if there's not enough drivers to fill out a full budget. So that makes it interesting from what we've spoke about. There's 4 drivers announced, as we know. We know that Sutton and Dan Camish are under contract for next year, so that's 6 drivers confirmed. Tom Ingram's out of contract. You would expect him to remain at Accelerate, a desirable team to remain with. For a few years there, I think people looked at Accelerate as being a one-car team, but last year they proved that they're not. And, if Tom's the number 1 driver, give it a couple of rounds and everything's going to be geared towards his championship challenge. I mean, it's probably clearer there than any other team at the moment, but that's just the fact. But Virtue, the sponsors, have signed a multi-year deal going forward from 2026, so that should be a good amount of financial security for the team. There has been mentions of people saying because of Tom coming through Jason Plato's academy many moons ago that he might have an affinity and go to Plato racing if they are as well off as people seem to think they are. But in his position, would you not stay with the best car or the best engine in the championship and try and get a 1-year deal and see what's playing out for the 2027 routes? I'd be surprised to see him move. I mean, his 2021 move to Hyundai and Accelerate was a bit of a surprise at the time because it was a fairly new car, hadn't won any races. He was in a race winning Toyota Speedworks. Why did he want to go? Well, his second year there, he won the title. He saw something, he wasn't daft. So, yeah, the lad's not daft, is he? We all know that. But a lot of drivers are going to be watching Plato this year to see what the quality of the cars and setup is, especially if there's the scope for them becoming a 4-car team the year after. People might want a piece of the action, but you never know. Car might not be any good. You don't know, do you? I mean, it's being built by RML, so it's going to be in it. But yeah, from conversations around people in the paddock, I've had a couple of phone calls last week. What we'll piece together is there are 11 drivers on fairly solid ground financially, and it's a case of seeing where the cards fall in terms of teams and finances. I think there's a bit of a better choice for some of them than there has been last year. We know that there's 5 working hard to get budgets. Hill's gone, Halstead's gone. There's a couple of names, if you look down the lists, who seem to have moved on. That's if you look down the list of drivers who raced in 2025. There's a couple I don't think we'll see coming back from what I've been told they're not. But it's not my place to announce or pre-announce other people's news, is it? Darryl De Leon didn't win the Porsche scholarship, which means that he's not going to be a Porsche Junior. But the lad might have had his head turned, and he's a lovely lad, great. I mean, he's a fantastic interview, very, very. Well, we knew even before when he came with Team Hard halfway through 2023 at Croft, he had a reputation already of being an excellent rear-wheel drive racer, and he'd performed some miracles in a GT3 Cup car, if I remember it was, in Britcar. Could there be a future in GT racing instead? I mean, it's where a lot of young drivers are looking to these days. In fact, speaking to, I think I said this the other day on the last touring car team, quite a few of the younger drivers are looking at TCR Europe because it's cheaper, 6 rounds, and like I said, you get into race places like Barcelona, Spa, places like that. What's not to like about that in many ways? But even though it's cheaper, you go and watch TCR Europe or TCR World Tour and are doing a write about them. Yeah, this is what some of the grandstands look like. One person with one drink. And is it hard to convince people to give over, tens of thousands to go and race in front of nobody with 4,000 people watching the stream on YouTube? Unless it's for a greater good at the end of the day. If you're already on the cusp of British touring cars, commercial senses, it's probably easier for some people to convince companies to give more companies to give money for a bigger exposure situation than going and racing something nobody really gives too much of a damn about, which is a shame because it's damn good racing. You're getting full grids, but nobody's watching. But that's one of the videos that's coming up soon, which might not be a touring car tee, but we're going to look into the numbers for touring cars around the world, because the Aussies have got it right, haven't they? And yeah, that was a bit exciting at the weekend, wasn't it? The championship didn't go the way that people had predicted all year long. It was going to be a Red Bull. This isn't a Red Bull. I don't like Red Bull. This is peppermint tea to make me better. Anyway, if you've gotten this far through without falling asleep, you're a very dedicated touring car fan. Like, comment, subscribe, and see you soon.